What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Court Storm College Hoops Talk podcast, which you can find right here on the Court Storm Media Network. We are your hosts, Kanaye and Josh, and on today's episode, we're going to have some coach carousel talk. We've already seen some programs pick up some new head coaches to fill the vacancies that were left by firings or just coaches stepping down. So a lot to get into regarding some of those moves that have already gone down, as well as naming some programs that could be looking for new names. We've seen some teams like Carolina, potentially Kansas, look and be in the market for new head coaches going into next season or perhaps somewhere in the near future, if not going into next year. But before we get into all that today, just a couple quick messages. First, us here at the Core Storm, we partnered with Phorm Energy to tell you about all the great products they have to offer, whether it's pre-workout, protein powders, amino acids, fitness supplements of any kind, fitness apparel, anything which you might need to be able to stay active, stay in the gym, stay motivated, stay high energy. They have it. And we're going to be plugging their full link in the description box below so you can check out their full website to see all the products they have on display. And as well as that, just want to say, please engage with the content on this channel in any way you can, whether it's liking, subscribing, or telling other people about the Court Storm. Everything goes a long way to influence the algorithm on YouTube. And be sure to turn on your post notifications so you're the first to see our latest content. So let's get right into it and start with one of the head coaching vacancies that have been filled, that being Jerrod Calhoun taking the job at Cincinnati following a very, very successful year at Utah State.
I'm probably going to give this a B plus. I like Jerrod Calhoun a lot. I think that at times it can be hit or miss with hiring for Utah State coaches. This is now the fourth Utah State coach that has been hired. I know Ryan Odom has succeeded very well at Virginia, and that's a very glad thing to see. Danny Sprinkle has not performed the way we wanted to, and Craig Dorn at Utah was fired after 3 years. So it more or less, I guess, depends on the program itself. And since he kind of falls in, probably in between Virginia and Washington, they have some history, they have some decent experience, but they're new to power conference play. They're really like a known Big 12 contender, and Wes Miller never really did anything much for them. The roster was great. If you gave Jerrod Calhoun the roster Wes Miller had at Utah State, not Utah State, at Cincy, they likely would have been a top 8 seed in the tournament this year. That is a very strong team, if you're going to ask me. And for Wes Miller's sake, he's actually coaching at Charlotte in the American now, so he's not done yet either, which is kind of fair. But I just feel like Calhoun can definitely succeed well at Cincy just because the NIL money is decent. But I don't really know what he does with the roster currently, because there's a lot of guys in this roster that definitely could stick around, especially Baba Miller, who was a freshman and had great.
Sean Baev,
too. Sean Baev as well. Actually, I think it was Sean Baev I was thinking about. He has great opportunity to be in the NBA next year if he plays under Calhoun. I think Calhoun could, get an early bump based off of just the leftovers that Wes Miller couldn't hold down. But outside of that, I think since he could become a small powerhouse in the area, I don't think they're going to be competitive in the Big 12 the way that Kansas or Arizona is right now. But I do feel like this is a team that should make the tournament next year just because of how good he has been. And I think of the past 4 Utah State coaches that have left, only Ryan Odom is probably better than him.
Yeah, I'm probably going to give this head coach move a B. I should say this hire a B, just because of the not great track record from the Utah State pipeline. Of course, Ryan Odom has had his success at Virginia. But nonetheless, Danny Sprinkle, some of the other guys have definitely not panned out the way a lot of people, including myself, thought they were going to. And let me say, this was a move that a lot of people, including myself and Josh, saw coming from a mile away. For someone whose alma mater is Cincy, made sense for Jerrod Calhoun to go back. And listen, we know that he can build a program. We saw what he did in just 1 year at Utah State. If he's able to hold over some of the guys from the Wes Miller era this past season, that's definitely going to give him a big boost and a big jump to elevate the ceiling of how far Cincy can go next year. I do think an NCAA tournament appearance could be in the realm of expectations, but definitely might want to pump the brakes. Viewing how some other Utah State head coach jumps have gone. But Listen, this I think is a good long-term hire. I do believe Jerrod Calhoun is gonna stick in Cincy, and I think over time we're gonna see them become more and more competitive in the Big 12.
Yeah, it's definitely a beneficial move at the end of the day. And I think for Utah State's sake, because we know that's another pipeline that's going to start. A new system begins,
Right.
and Utah State is going to the new Pac-12, so there is going to be more of a desire. I'd like to throw it to Takayo from UNCW. That's just a quick recommendation. I think Utah State is just the new stepping stone for coaches for whatever reason. I like that they just can't seem to get away from having good coaches, but also can't seem to keep them. I think Siddle is just a perfect growing coach in the field. He did great at UNCW these past, I think, 2 seasons, and he will do great at Utah State if he goes. But I think the main point of this is just saying that Jerrod Calhoun's in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Now let's move on to Randy Bennett. Following Bobby Hurley and ASU deciding to part ways, ASU has gone out and hired longtime St. Mary's Gales head coach Randy Bennett. We all know how Randy Bennett loves running that elaborate offense that feels like it drains all 30 seconds of the shot clock, but he's had a lot of success at St. Mary's in the regular season. Of course, we haven't really seen him go on a true run in March Madness, but they've commonly appeared in the tournament over the last couple of seasons. They've won, I believe 4 straight WCC regular season championships. They won the tournament just, I want to say 3 years back now. So he's definitely coming from a lot of winning. And I definitely believe that he could really bring some more success to the ASU program that has definitely struggled under Bobby Hurley. I just think that Randy Bennett's probably more suited for the West Coast than Bobby Hurley ever was. And obviously, I'm sure he's going to be able to pull some of his guys from Moraga, California to Arizona State in Tempe.
Yeah, I'm personally going to give this an A, or maybe even an A plus, depending on how things go in the first season. Because first off, what a surprise! I didn't really think this would ever happen, and Randy Bennett felt like just the coach to stick around as well, given the fact that he had the WCC mostly to himself after Gonzaga leaves. But I think he was complacent in that. He did not want to be complacent in that fact, because the WCC, even with Randy Bennett, would likely be a one big league. You're losing your nearly guaranteed, I should say, quad 1A opportunity in Gonzaga, and maybe you get quad 1 wins out of Santa Clara and San Francisco once every year, but that's just not gonna cut it for a team that likes to get top 7, top 5 seeds typically. And for Bennett's sake, I mean, this is a great hire. This is an insanely good hire. You're going to probably the best conference right now. You're going to be a rival to a former graduate of Mark Few's system. So back in a small rivalry, no less, with Tommy Lloyd. And, I think that the style of coaching and gameplay that Randy Bennett makes insane sense in the Big 12. He can, the slow slog with some decent 3-point shooting and some big man play is exactly what works in the Big 12. I think he fits so well. And even if he only gets 5 or 10 years in his older age, he is probably a top 5 coach in the Big 12 with experience alone right now. I think that is such a huge deal to make if you're going to ask me. And I honestly could see Arizona State being a better team than Arizona by the end of the decade. If I was always high on Randy Bennett. I just never thought this was going to ever even happen. And I do feel horrible for Santa Clara. I don't know who could really replace them, because now the WCC is even more cooked with him gone. But for Arizona State's purposes, this is a breath of fresh air, and the NIL money can actually start flowing into a program that desperately needs to use it well.
Right. I don't hate that take. You saying that Arizona State could end up being better than Arizona in a decade. And I'm going to give this coaching hire an A minus. I just want to see, it's tough to give it an A or an A plus, because we don't know how Randy Bennett's going to translate to coaching Power 5 basketball more consistently. We've seen some players come out of St. Mary's who maybe didn't pan out at the Power 5 level. Let's see if a coach can do it. But still, yeah, I mean, one of the best candidates that was going to be on the market. I honestly think Randy Bennett probably should have maybe waited a little bit longer with some of the other head coaching vacancies that could open up down the road here. But again, for someone that you didn't think was going to be on the market for the reasons you mentioned with the WCC the dispersion there, Zaga leaving, it's really probably only going to be one bid league going forward. And West Coast Conference, is, lack for better words, kind of dead right now following the loss of Randy Bennett and the Gonzaga Bulldogs. So I think it's a great hire by ASU. They need someone who knows the West Coast pipeline well, and that's something that Bobby Hurley didn't really ever possess. And I think he's going to get ASU back in the right direction. So don't be surprised we see some good hoops being played out in Tempe pretty soon. But let's move on to the next head coach hire that we wanted to get into, that being Bryan Hodgson to Providence at Friartown. Very, very demanding fan base. They seem very happy. They think they found their guy. What do you think about that, Josh?
I think it's weird because I think we both said that he was likely going to be going to Syracuse, and
Yeah.
I think this is also an off-recording thing, but you had mentioned that Providence had the bigger NIL budget, and I didn't believe you. And that ended up being what was the deciding factor, because Hodgson admitted that, yeah, he went to Providence because there was more NIL there and he had more to build with. And I think that's fair. South Florida had a pretty decent budget considering where it was. The American's still a good conference, but it's not Memphis money. It's like maybe second tier mid-major, but it's still like good. Now you're getting a top like 3 budget in the Big East. Like, he might run house very quickly. And I like Kim English as well. I hope he finds a new career somewhere else. Maybe he can go out to like St. Mary's and he can take over a position there, or go to Siena now that Gerry McNamara is gone. But I think from my standpoint, Hodgson has done a lot in a little amount of time. He has good experience. I think people forget that he coached as an assistant with Nate Oates at Buffalo. He saw not prime Nate Oates, but he saw how to build a mid-major program with one of probably a future great, if you're going to ask me. And now he goes and does the same thing at a South Florida team that, really needed to step up after losing their coach. I think it's a great pickup. I'm probably going to give it an A. Originally, I'd give it like a B just because I didn't really want him at Providence, which sounds kind of rude. I thought he would have been the better opportunity at Syracuse, but I just think that looking back on it now, this is the right choice, mostly for Providence. I think he probably would have been decent at Syracuse as well, but Providence is a tournament team next year. Don't be shocked. They could really be contending for a Big East title before the end of next season.
Right. I think this is a slam dunk hire. I'm going to give it an A as well. Bryan Hodgson he's tough. He's unapologetic. That completely matches the Providence Friar fan base. And listen, they've gotten tired of losing 3 straight years missing the NCAA tournament following the departure of Ed Cooley, who got them the Big East regular season championship in 2022. Bryan Hodgson's already gone on record and called out coaches. It's telling them, you better not come after my players, because I'm going to find you and I'm going to, tell you off, because no one's going to tamper with my players. And I love that. I think he completely fits the mantra and the energy that is Friartown. And listen, he's really good at player development. I mean, he got Isaiah Nelson become the American Conference, both Player of the Year and Defense Player of the Year. I would expect to see some of those themes continue in Providence. I think he fits the Big East. I really do. I understand he's not from the Northeast, but he definitely has that type of a vibe to him. Actually, he might be from Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. I forget off the top of my head, but still, at the end of the day, I think this is a great hire for Providence. I almost feel that it feels weird to say this, but I feel like he fits more as a Providence coach than Kim English maybe ever did. So I think this was a great hire by the Providence athletic department, and I should expect the Friars to be pretty good pretty soon. He's got the budget to back up the talks. I'm super excited to see what they do in the near future. But let's get into the last head coaching hire that we wanted to talk about. 2003 national champion, played with Carmelo Anthony, Gerry McNamara, put on one of the best coaching auditions that we could have possibly seen from a mid-major guy in what he did with Siena's very, very narrow loss to the Duke Blue Devils, who are the number 1 overall seed in the tournament, in the first round matchup in a 1-16 duel. Of course, he's been named as a candidate for the Syracuse job for a long time, following them parting ways with Adrian Autry. I think for a long time, the way I looked at it was, if you were going to give GMAC the job because he was in the Syracuse family, but maybe wasn't as qualified as the others, wrong move. But I think when you consider the other candidates and how maybe they really haven't had the tournament success that you would like to see out of a head coach candidate, and the fact that, GMAC coached his ass off against Duke. I think I'm more comfortable with the hire now than I was probably 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, there's definitely that to it. And from my standpoint, I had this originally as a B minus, assuming this was happening
Yeah.
before the tournament. I think this is probably a B just because of how good he played or he coached against Duke. I don't really know at the end of the day. This one is something that's going to be hard to get behind in year one. I don't know if
Yeah.
he's going to make the tournament in year one. This one has a little bit more ambiguity just because he didn't have a lot of time at Siena, and this was one of the better seasons. He didn't, this is not. It's hard to really describe it just because it's great from the standpoint that yeah, McNamara has this previous Syracuse tie. He played with Melo. He won a championship, but he's not like Red Audrey in the fact that he just came from the system. He had to earn it, but it wasn't as earned as maybe Hodgson had earned it. Like the MAAC is an all right conference, but he's never won the MACC outright. He's
Right.
always had to play second fiddle to Joey Gallo, and I think that's a big talking point in here because, like, how do you play seventh, eighth, ninth fiddle and expect to make the tournament in the ACC? The ACC will be good again, but is he on the level of Andy Enfield at SMU? Is he on the level of Mike Young at Virginia Tech? Or is he on the level of Ryan Odom at Virginia? Is he on the level of, Hubert Davis at UNC? Like there could be levels to where, yeah, if he keeps his roster, he keeps Kean Anthony, grows the talent around, he brings his Siena guys with him. Like you could be talking about a roster that is capable of doing damage, but I'm not convinced as I would have been if Bryan Hodgson was here. So it's a good hire, but Syracuse might need to start distancing themselves from their like Boeheim system players and coaches if this does not work out.
Yeah, quite honestly, I'm probably between a C plus and a B minus here. I love GMAC. As someone who grew up watching a ton of Syracuse basketball, he's a legend to me in my eyes. I mean, I'll never forget. Hearing all the stories of Q's fans of him winning the back-to-back Big East tournament championships in 05, 06. Of course, the 6 threes in the first half against Kansas in the 03 national championship game. But I do worry that this was rushed. Now, there's two ways to look at this. One, if this works out, you have a coach for the next 30 years. But if it doesn't, it's tough to fire GMAC. Considering the history, the ties he has with the program as a player, the amount of time he spent as an assistant coach. That being said, though, there's something about GMAC that makes me just want to believe in him. The amount of things that the former players, the alumni who played under GMAC at Cuse while he was an assistant, I mean, they've only had good things to say about him. They said that he is the right guy for the job. And I think that speaks volumes as to how much belief there is in McNamara taking over for Cuse. And another thing is, too, GMAC understands what it means to for Syracuse to be great. He understands what the standard is supposed to be and how Syracuse has gotten very, very far away from that, where students who go there now, younger fans of the Orange, they don't understand that. I mean, you don't really storm the court when you beat a ranked team. No one comes into the dome and wins. I mean, that was just an expectation. And of course, you can point to the departure of the ACC as part of the reasons why. But still, I think GMAC understands what the expectations are from the older Syracuse Orange fans, and he knows that Syracuse needs to get back to that standard. Their NIL budget has not been great the past couple of seasons, but he has been promised a budget that is in the top third of the ACC this upcoming season. So that should give him the resources to be able to work with, where Autry never really had those types of resources. Autry, I just think, was obviously next in line after Boeheim, but probably should have never got the job. I think this past year Syracuse team was talented enough on paper to make the NCAA tournament. Autry just was not the guy to be the head coach, was not an X's and O's guy. Really ran no offense whatsoever. An immediate difference. GMAC runs an offense. I mean, I love the energy he coaches with in that game against Duke in the first round. He's out there in a defensive stance as the Siena Bulldogs were defending Cam Boozer. So I love to see that. But listen, I think you're going to probably need to give it a year, maybe two. But I do believe GMAC will get this, ship turnaround in Central New York. And I think you're going to see a coach. You're hopefully going to have a coach here for the next 2-3 decades.
Yeah, there hopefully can be that re-rise in a program that has been so knocked down.
Yeah.
It reminds me in the best way of Louisville right now. We saw
Yeah.
Louisville was just trashed. And I guess Michigan as well, now thinking about it. They were trashed by, especially for Michigan now, thinking about, because Juwan Howard had,
Former player,
he had ties to Michigan in the same way that Red Audrey had ties to Syracuse. And I get Dusty May is not Gerry McNamara, but there is a pathway for him to regain that Boeheim style Syracuse where, yeah, the wireless dome is not a place that you just casually lose at. There's no need for a court storm because you guys don't lose at home. Like it's just that simple. And I think that McNamara has a great opportunity to turn into like a Matt Painter per se, a former great player that just greets his program well and transforms it into a new style powerhouse. And I think the ACC is a great place to do it in. I would have liked the Big East more if Syracuse had stayed, and I think that does deal a lot into the argument here, but the ACC will never be as good as the Big Ten and the Big 12. And I think that gives into McNamara's edge in just that he only has to really beat 3 good ACC teams every year to be a tournament team, most likely. And if you could beat Duke one time, like if you beat Duke or North Carolina or Virginia one time in the next 5 years per year, good chance you're a tournament team if you keep your record straight. So I think it's not in the way that McNamara is not going to be able to succeed. I think he will. It's just to what level, because the standard's high. Like Boeheim had 1 seeds, he had a championship, he had Final Four runs. Like there's a lot that goes into the culture here. And I know you know it better than me, Kanaye. You're probably the best person I could ask you on this. But do you think it's possible to regain the tradition that was lost when Boeheim left?
I mean, it's tough because I think it is possible to regain the lore. I mean, the aura, I guess if you want to call it that, that surrounded the Syracuse basketball program for so long. But in another way, you have to do it differently than Boeheim did it. You can't run a 2-3 zone. That doesn't work anymore. And I know Boeheim built his career off of that. But listen, I think GMAC, he's a guy that's going to light into his players. He's going to be someone who can MF his guys. He's going to be able to light some fire. I do think he is a little bit more of a player's coach than Boeheim ever was. I understand a lot of guys were in the doghouse with Boeheim while playing for him. And I think GMAC's probably not that same type of a character, but I do think he has more motivation behind it because Syracuse is very dear to his heart. I'm not saying it wasn't to Autry, but GMAC won't be able to live with himself for the rest of his life if this experiment of him being the head coach of Syracuse fails. And I think that's something that it is very, very important to him. He wants to be remembered as one of the great Syracuse legends, and he already is as a player. Can he do it as a coach too? And if he doesn't do well as a coach, it's definitely going to blemish how he's remembered in Syracuse and in Central New York overall. So I believe in GMAC. I do think it's possible to weaponize the dome, as the new athletic director at Syracuse has said. But it's obviously going to take some time. It's going to take Syracuse being more willing to spend some more money. Hey, by the way, get Adam Weitzman back on your NIL funding payroll. He was big. I mean, getting Brady, Gronk, other guys to the dome, and you just kick him out. I understand he had some disagreements with the chancellor there, but he would help a lot because the budget has not been what it needs to be the last couple of seasons. So hopefully they figure that out. But yeah, I really do believe GMAC's got a chance to turn this thing around here.
Yeah, that's true. But those are the 4 main pickups. I know we could talk about Casey Alexander for a bit, and I think that is probably a B or B plus. Just throw that out there. And for Alan Huss as well, replacing the retired Greg McDermott, Hall of Fame coach in my opinion, but that's probably also a B or B plus. I think those are just more expected things, and those happen not as recent as now, but those are just other ones I wanted to bring up too. But let's get on to the 3 programs that we think need or might get replacements this upcoming offseason. I think the biggest one is North Carolina. Hubert Davis has not officially resigned or has been kicked out, but it's likely that North Carolina and him will part ways. The contract he has is very big. There is still that to it. Yeah, the buyout will be a pain. I will say, do you think he does go this offseason?
This is tough because, quite honestly, I think he probably does. Listen, Carolina is a very, very tough job. It is immediately results oriented. I mean, you got to win right away. And granted, he got to a Final Four in his first year. Granted, kind of a fluky Final Four, but nonetheless, still got him there. Was a 1 seed 2 years after that, falling the missed NCAA tournament appearances. But it's just, if I'm Carolina, I don't know. I'm not saying Hubert Davis deserved with the job he did this year to coach one more season. But moving on right now, when the head coaching carousel does not look great, it's kind of a tough call to make. I still do think Carolina probably does move on. And I do want to preface this. I don't know if it's fair to say Hubert Davis ever really wanted the head coaching job at Carolina. Yes, he's a former player, was in the family. I'm an assistant under Roy Williams. But, Roy Williams is kind of just Hubert Davis is kind of just the handpicked guy by Roy Williams to take his place. And I mean, what do? You can't say no to the head coaching job at Carolina. I mean, you'd be you'd be crucified for not taking that gig. And that's kind of just a position Hubert Davis found himself in. I don't know if he ever really had any sights on being a head coach at any point, but that's just the situation he found himself in. And unfortunately for him, it hasn't really gone the way a lot of people thought it may have gone. And right now, I think, Josh brought this up to me on off recording. I think the candidate that makes most sense is Mark Byington, and I'll let you speak to that now because I know you're very, very excited about what he could do.
I am.
Chapel Hill.
I have been on the Byington train since JMU, I think 3 years back now. It's been so long to even think that he was there. But the transition that he made going from JMU to Vanderbilt, who, by the way, not a well-known program for college basketball. Overnight, he flipped the script, had one of the best starts, if not, I think the best start to Vanderbilt season ever, and transitioned players from literally nothing. Like A.K. Okerkele was, I think, a student manager at Cornell when he first started college. Like, he was not a well-known prospect in the portal either. And Tyler Tanner was a 5-point, under 30% 3-point shooting freshman guard who was undersized when he first started out with Byington at Vanderbilt. Look where Tyler Tanner is now. Likely a first-round draft pick, a near 20-point-per-game scorer, and nearly had one of the craziest March Madness moments the other day against Nebraska. I think that Byington has so well earned a spot at the table. And let's be real with you. The list for North Carolina's replacement is not as big as you think. Like Otzenberger, Dusty May, Todd Golden, they're all likely too far tied down. Grant McCaslin is definitely an opportunity at Texas Tech, but I just don't feel like the move is right for him. Mark Byington was born and raised in Southern Virginia. He is an East Coast guy that is not tied down in his program. He's only been there for 2 years, and he's already shown enough, in my opinion, to deserve this role. He already has more wins this and last year in March Madness than, Hubert Davis had. And I don't think Hubert Davis had even, I actually don't think Mark Byington had even half, or I guess you could say, about half of the NIL money. He probably had maybe 5 million in Vanderbilt's roster. North Carolina had what, 20 million if I'm not wrong? They were paying Kyan Evans more than Tyler Tanner.
Right.
And they got a 5 seed, they won a game, they nearly won 2 games. What did North Carolina do? Nothing. They lost a 19-point lead to VCU. I get it without Caleb Wilson, but you just don't lose the games like that. I'm blaming that very heavily on Hubert Davis. You don't lose games like that. And I think that is such a bad straw to pick, regardless of how you want to, call it. And it just all makes sense. And if Vanderbilt is to lose Byington, which sucks, the program really started in a fresh spot, I think it's a great opportunity to just reach into those mid-major waters. I already mentioned Takayo Skittle. He's a great opportunity for him at UCW. George Mason. I think it's Troy Skin. Troy Skin looks like a really good choice as well. He definitely could be promoted to a high major level. So I think it's not over for Vanderbilt if they lose Byington, but I just don't see Byington being a coach that gets locked down in a program like Vanderbilt, just because it's Vanderbilt. They don't have NIL money like that, and they're not a top SEC school. They never was. They never really were, and I don't really think they're going to be anytime soon. No offense, but let's be real with you. If the job opens up at Chapel Hill, that is such a good job. That's a top 5, maybe top 10 job at any year. I would never ignore it. And if I'm Mark Byington, that sounds like the slam dunk deal. I actually hope that it happens for Byington's sake, because he could really be a he's probably one of the best replacements possible in any market.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I do want to throw out there, I have seen some rumors online that Carolina could potentially be looking to buy out Todd Golden, get him, lure him from Gainesville over to Chapel Hill. I doubt that'll happen, though. I do know Carolina is willing to, drop a pretty large bag on both buying out a coach and giving them a big contract following that. I'm just going to be honest. I don't think Golden leaves Gainesville. It just would not make sense to me. But yeah, I think Mark Byington would be a slam dunk hire. Yeah, he's definitely, it's been so impressive what he's done at Vanderbilt. It just one, I mean, even going back to JMU, like you mentioned, how he built two different programs in such short amounts of time. Even last year, before Vandy was a real tournament team, they were playing teams in what was the toughest SEC ever, very very tough. And this year, of course, they went on their little bit of a run. I think Mark Byington will fit so well in Chapel Hill, and who knows, I do know that Tyler Tanner is projected to be a first round pick, though it is late, I believe 28 or 29th. We could see him take the Boogie Fland, Tahad Pettiford route and maybe pull his name out of the draft to play a prove it year in Carolina under some brighter lights. So that would, I think, a package deal between Byington and a Tanner would be great for UNC's chances next season in the ACC and in the national landscape overall. But let's get into the next head coaching job that we want to talk about, that being Bill Self at Kansas. Now, there's been no official word regarding whether Bill Self wants to call it quits and, either retire, or I've even heard some people say have more of a Coach Cal Kentucky type of separation where maybe he takes a job somewhere else. But honestly, I don't think you can fault Bill Self for Kansas's struggles to get out of the second round over the last couple of seasons. I think he quite honestly overachieved with the roster he had this year. I don't think they were nearly as talented as some of the other rosters he had in the past. And he got guys that just played tough and played for the name on the front, as we've talked about the entire year. Quite honestly, I think that he really got screwed. I mean, anyone in this East region got screwed if they ended up here. And unfortunately had to play the Johnnies in the second round, which is just a tough matchup for the Jayhawks. Honestly, I don't know how you replace Bill Self. It's just someone that's so hard to replace. I couldn't even name a candidate off the top of my head who I think would be fit to fill his void if he does end up deciding to step down and retire.
I don't think he will this year.
I don't think he will either.
I think it's very close. I think it's very close. He actually will consider it, and I think he was considering it, as he mentioned in that press conference. I think this is a good year if he wanted to end it off with. He has a number one overall pick in the draft, most likely with Darren Peterson. He had a rebound season in a way, and he would leave Kansas in a good spot. You have guys like Badunga that would likely stick around, and you have a culture that was literally grown from the ground through him. Obviously, he's not going to be remembered like, Fogg would be, or maybe some others in the past, but he has 2 championships as recently as 2022. And I think that might be a reason why he stays, just because there is still legacy in that. But if he does leave, if I were Kansas, I would pick up the phone and call literally anybody you could. Otzenberger, I'd go into the NBA and call Brad Stevens. I would ask for Todd Golden, Dusty May. I mentioned Graham McCassin before, Tommy Lloyd. Like any coach right now that's still quite young, that has maybe, the potential to be anything like Bill Self, and there are quite a few of them if you're going to ask me, I would call them up, because there are very few opportunities to do that. Or I would just turn inward, which is probably the better idea, and pick up Jack Avon. I like Jack Avon a lot. He's had his experiences elsewhere, but Kansas is just a good spot for him to be at. And he gives me that, like, Coach K to John Shire pipeline. I think it might just be better to do something like that, especially at a noble, blue blood franchise in Kansas. But before you choose Jack Avon, I think you got to call up every top 10 coach and just ask. Because honestly, if I'm a good coach and I'm under 5 years experience, I'm at high major level, I might call up Lawrence. I might call them up and be like, can I have that job? Can I have that position? Because let's be real with you, and I don't want to make this a whole point, but I mentioned this off screen again. We're about to hit the great coaching replacement. In the same way that we saw Boeheim, Coach K, Jay Wright, North Carolina, like a lot of these programs saw their coaches leave and were replaced within a 5-year span. We're going to get that on a larger scale. Painter, Izzo, Self, Patino, possibly Coach Cal, possibly Mark Few. Like the next 5 years are likely going to see the greatest change in, modern college basketball coaching history. We're going to see a completely new top be replaced. And, I think we're at a good spot where I'd expect guys like Dusty May and Todd Golden and Nate Oates to be in those new rankings, per se, like the new Izzos, the new painters, and so on and so forth. But I think the pipeline to those positions starts now. Like if you are a good mid-major coach, you want to get hired by one of these high majors like the Kansas States, the Virginias, the Georgia Techs, like any coach that was just recently hired or will be hired this year or next year. This is your opportunity to 3 or 4 years down the line, working in East Lansing, working in Lawrence, working in West Lafayette, working in Queens. Like you want to have one of those opportunities. Here it is. And for coaches that are like sticking around, like I think Nate Oates is a great opportunity to replace a Bill Self in the next few years. For example, like I don't think that high majors are going to be ignored as well. Like there will be a massive chain for every big coach that leaves. And if Self is the first one of this new wave, then I'm very excited to see where it all goes because the landscape is about to shift drastically. So hold on to your butts.
Yeah, I love all the points you made pertaining to Bill Self and the potential for a Kansas job vacancy. I agree. You probably got to go out and call all the top 10 coaches around the country, top 15 maybe. You got to go probably look to buy someone out because we forgot to kind of mention this with Carolina too. Both Carolina and Kansas, I don't think those fan bases nor those athletic departments are going to be content pulling someone up from the mid majors and handing them the keys to, the top 5 best basketball programs of all time, to the Blue Bloods. It's just not going to happen. So your best bet's probably going to be a buyout. I do love how you mentioned Nate Oates. I think he could be a serious candidate, honestly, for the Carolina job too. I didn't even consider him before, and as well as Kansas. But let's get on to the last head coaching vacancy that we want to talk about, or, real vacancy, the first one on this video that we want to talk about. That being Butler. Thad Matta has announced his retirement just a couple weeks back. And right off the top of my head, I think one of the top candidates for this Butler job is probably Travis Steele for Miami, Ohio. Do I think Travis Steele leaves Miami, Ohio? I would lean towards no. And in that case, then I think that opens it up for maybe an NBA assistant or maybe someone like a Bobby Hurley just being able to play in the Big East where his brother is already coaching at UConn. I think Micah Shrewsbury could be a potential candidate for this Butler job, although I don't like that. I have heard some conversations around Shrewsbury being in the head coaching search race. But listen, Butler's an attractive destination for a head coach. I understand they've fallen on some tough years, some tougher times, but when Butler's at their peak, I mean, it's a great fan base. It is a great basketball school in a great basketball state of Indiana. And, when you think back to the days in the Horizon League, when you think back to the days, I think even as far, as not too long ago, I think just in, I believe 2021, 2022, they were ranked fairly high in the Associated Press poll. Listen, this Butler job is attractive. It is going to be a big rebuild, but the benefits you're going to reap following that, if you are able to get it back on the tracks, I think they're going to be incredible.
Yeah, it's an odd position, and I'm glad that you brought it up like that, just because the way that I look at this Butler position is a way different look than so many other people that just know it. Because let's be real with you, Thad Matta didn't really have a strong influence at Butler. Yeah. This was not his main school. Let's be real with you. This was not where, this was a retirement place in a way for him. He was getting there, and it's a shame that he never got to the tournament with this team, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, 2020, they could have got a 1 seed. And I think that the legacy of the Gordon Haywards and the Brad Steven types need to be remembered because think about how much the Big East has changed since Butler has joined it and since those, I think it was back-to-back national championship runner-ups. Yeah. I get it, those are both not expected, but you talk about it in general, but I really do feel like Butler is a slept-on school with its tradition. It's Indiana. Indiana is the center of basketball. And I think that I think that Travis Steele probably has the best chance here. I know you said no. I say yes because I don't really know if it's worthwhile for Travis Steele to sit around for another year. I think that
Fair.
this is a good time to make a move. And I just feel like he's not going to get a job in North Carolina. The opportunities at Kansas State, Arizona State, all those like other ones have pretty much been taken. And I don't think he's going to go the mid-major route, like going to a South Florida, for
Yeah.
example. This is nearby. This is a good program. And this is one that needs a solid rebuild, which Travis Steele did. John Groce could also go here, but I think he's too tied down, although I said the same thing about Rennie Bennett, so I'm not going to say no to that. And then I think literally any mid-major coach that talked about the Skittles, like the GMUs, like any, literally Joey Gallo too even, like there are
Yeah.
strong mid-major coaches that can really bring back Butler. The main problem I have is, remember how I mentioned that Providence is a top 3 NIL budget in the Big East? Butler has a top or bottom 3. They're down there with, I think, DePaul and I want to
Probably.
say, yeah,
Seton Hall, I would think.
yeah, Seton Hall. I think it's literally Seton Hall, DePaul, and then Butler in that order. Listen, DePaul or not DePaul, Butler can put in money in the way that DePaul and Seton Hall can't. They have the legacy and therefore they can do it. And the athletic director literally said that he would put in more money if they get a good coach. So I could totally see
Right.
that being maybe like not bottom 3, maybe like a middle team.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think the main point about this is how open the Big East is right now. Like that's the real thing that I think people are forgetting about. The Big East had 3 teams in the tournament, maybe a bubble team in Seton Hall, and nothing else. You are replacing Creighton. You are replacing Butler. You just replaced Providence, and you just replaced Xavier. Like half the Big East was either gone or was in a down year. Look at Shaka Smart. Look at King English Scum. Look at Ed Cooley. Like there is a complete basin of just nothing. Like there other than Patino and Hurley, there is nothing in the Big East, and I guess now Kevin Willard, there is nothing in the Big East. You want to be that next team up.
Right. And I think that people aren't given enough credit for it in terms of just how you're going to probably be able to be pretty competitive if you make the right moves this offseason. If you take the Butler job, St. John's going to have a massive turnaround between the losses of the players they have right now. UConn, same deal. Marquette, I still kind of got to see it to believe in Shaka Smart and what he's going to do to not have what happened this year happen again. Same thing goes with, Seton Hall. I think Seton Hall could be competitive this year, next year. But again, they're towards the bottom of the league in spending. DePaul is obviously still kind of trying to build some more culture behind Chris Holtmann. There's a real chance that you could finish in the top 4 of this league next year.
Exactly.
Without much trouble.
That's the exact point I'm going to get at, Kanaye, because let's be real with you. It's not guaranteed that Bryan Hodgson and Alan Huss and Richard Pitino are going to succeed immediately. I mean, Pitino did not succeed at all. Xavier did not look good, and he knew about it. And I don't think that's going to happen again because Pitino is a good coach. I'm talking about the younger Pitino, not the father. But I think that if you hire, especially a guy of Travis Steele's caliber, you're not just staying foot in the bubble or being a top 5 team in the Big East. You're guaranteeing yourself a whole decade of being a tournament team, a whole decade of being a top 5 team in the Big East, because I think people are forgetting that the Big East just lost everything. They had to dump what was left of the old legacy Big East, and what we saw in those previous years or these past 2 or 3 years has just been that change. But that change is starting to come back to fruition because look at what we're going to get. We're going to get a whole new set of coaches. We're going to get a whole new set of players. Like the UConn championships, assuming UConn doesn't win this year, are now 2 whole years in the past. Like there is a whole new setting in the Big East that can arguably field like a half conference of tournament teams and maybe a bubble team or 2. Like I don't think that the 3-bid or 4-bid conference that the Big East has been known for these past few years is going to stay. Like I really think that if there's ever a time to be a coach in the Big East, it's next year and it's maybe the season after that, because the growth and rebuilding opportunity is there. And you want to get in on that, you should come here. And the only spot left is Butler. I get it, they're not great at NIL. But look at what Holloway did. Look at what Holloway did. I think that's so underrated as well that he has a smaller budget and he nearly got in. Imagine you get a good budget with a good coach. You should be perfectly fine. Like I don't know what people are complaining about saying this is not a good position to fill. This is a great position to fill at the best possible time. And I think they should go for Travis Steele simply because of that alone.
Completely agree with you there. But that is going to be taking care of everything that we had for you guys today. Of course, we are really, really excited to see what head coaching vacancies continue to open up and how they are filled, along with how the new coaches that have already filled new positions at new schools, how they perform in their first seasons at their respective new programs. But until the next episode, we'll see you all next time.